Jigsaw was great. Can't wait to watch the original again.
Where has she been all my life? Like a moth to her flame. Make her my princess, I'd make her my wife, but I don't even know.
You can act like a man! What's the matter with you? Is this how you turn out a Hollywood Pinocchio that cries like a woman? What can I do? What can I do? What is that now? What is it?
Where has she been all my life? I'm
Spend time with your family?
drawn like a moth to her flame.
Look.
Walt Disney Studios presents a Studio Ghibli production of a Hayao Miyazaki film.
Where has she
Hold on.
been all my life?
This June,
Drawn Where has she been all my life? Where has she been all my life? I'm drawn like a moth to her flame. Make her my princess.
No!
Make her my
Dear God, what's wrong with me?
I know exactly what's wrong with you, my child.
Ah! What the heck are you doing here?
Well, you said dear God,
Yeah, but that's not what I meant.
but it's what I meant.
What?
I can tell you exactly what's wrong with you, my son. You have forgotten what it means to like a movie.
What do you mean? I like tons of movies. Several of my favorites just scarred me for life in that dream sequence.
No, my child, you have forgotten. You have allowed this strange ripoff, this anomaly of a movie to warp your mind, make you question your own sense of artistic quality, make you doubt your own ability to form opinions. And now you have allowed it to destroy you. You don't make YouTube videos anymore. Instead, you sleepwalk through school like a zombie, struggling to find even motivation to make your own films. And this dream of yours, in which some of your favorite films turn against you after watching Jigsaw, was the final straw, the climax of the psychological purgatory you've willingly become trapped in.
Yeah, that reminds me. Did I actually see Jigsaw, or was that a dream too?
That's not important. What's important is that you now have the obligation, nay, the responsibility, of rediscovering what it means to truly like a movie. Once you rediscover what it means to truly like a movie, then you will be cured of your intellectual illness.
Well, how do I do that?
It can only be done by watching a specific movie. A movie so controversial, it came out in 1997, and people continue to constantly debate over whether or not it is a worthy film. In fact, you yourself continue to constantly debate over whether or not it is a worthy film.
You don't mean!
I do.
But I already reviewed The Lost World.
Not that. There's no controversy with that one. You're the only one who likes it. Think hard. It's a film from 1997 that many people, including yourself, still debate whether or not is a good film.
Surely you don't mean...
I do.
I've always wanted to review Event Horizon.
For the love of me, no! Think really hard. What movie from 1997 is still highly debated to this day? It's directed by one of your favorite directors. It won 11 Academy Awards.
Surely you don't mean...
I do.
No! Not Titanic! Yes, James Cameron's Titanic. First released in 1997 and later re-released in 2012, this 3-hour and 14-minute epic about two Romeo and Juliet type lovers who meet on board the most famous ship in history and must survive its sinking together very quickly became one of the most successful movies ever made. It made more than $2 billion worldwide and won, not just got nominated for, but won 11 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. 11 Academy Awards! This film, along with Ben-Hur and Return of the King, holds the record for the most Academy Awards ever won by a single movie. And yet, just like there are countless souls who praise this as one of the greatest films of all time, there are also countless souls who firmly believe this is one of the worst movies of all time. And, I'm not gonna lie, I'm both. I'm not kidding. This is both one of the best movies I've ever seen and one of the worst movies I've ever seen at the same time. I have spent years trying to decide whether or not this is a good movie, and every time I think I've decided it's good, the horrible things about it stop me. And every time I think I've decided it's horrible, the great things about it stop me. I have never been able to firmly decide whether or not I like this movie. Never.
Do you see now why you must review this film? By trying to decide whether or not you like it, you will rediscover what it truly means to discern film finesse from film feces. Are you ready, my child?
Yes, Lord. I don't want to do it, but I know it must be done.
Then embark on your quest, and remember, I shall be with you the entire way.
Thanks, God. This is James Cameron's Titanic. So the film begins with a pretty nice opening credits sequence. The recreation of historical footage is optimistically calm, and the music, without the presence of a certain singer, is soothing yet contemplative, as if it's lamenting the fact that these people are so excited and have no idea what's coming. It's a solemn and effective introduction. For approximately 30 seconds. Yeah, I counted. This intro is 34 seconds long. Why is that a problem? Because it takes time for visuals and music to get the viewer into the intended mood. While the technique of this opening is effective, it's so short that it fades to this really out-of-place feeling title card right when the audience is starting to get into the mood. It ends at just the right moment where the viewer's brain is transitioning to the mood of the opening, like when you're laying in bed, about to fall asleep, but then suddenly jolt awake for no reason. It just confuses our brains about what to feel. This is just the opening credits, and already the movie is both great and terrible at the same time. I have no idea how that's possible. As the title and music fade out, we see a modern-day treasure hunter, played by the late Bill Paxton, and his team searching for the wreck of the ship. This scene gets me every single time. Not only is the sound design fantastic, perfectly conveying the cold, lifeless wasteland of the ocean floor, but a lot of the footage in this scene was filmed at the actual wreck. The production actually went down to the actual wreck of the ship, built housing for the cameras that could withstand the pressure, and filmed the exterior shots of the ship and the submersibles. When you see the ship in this scene, you're seeing the actual Titanic. It's awe-inspiring. I also like the fact that Paxton's filming a really lazy documentary he doesn't give a crap about, indicating he probably told the people funding the expedition they were going down there to film a documentary, and then he realized, oh crap, I actually gotta make a documentary now. It's a nice, funny little touch. They go into a bedroom on the ship, obviously looking for something specific, find a safe under a door, and bring it back to the surface. But, unfortunately, the thing they were looking for wasn't in there. But they did find an envelope, and upon cleaning it, they find a drawing of a young woman wearing a large necklace, which just so happens to be the very thing they're looking for. After showing the drawing on the news, they get a call from a 100-year-old woman named Rose, who claims to be the woman in the picture. Thinking she may be able to tell them where the necklace is, they fly her out to the expedition.
Look, I've already done the background on this woman all the way back to the 20s, when she was working as an actress. An actress! There's your first clue, Sherlock. Her name was Rose Dawson back then. Then she marries this guy named Calvert. They move to Cedar Rapids and she punches out a couple of kids. Now Calvert's dead, and from what I hear, Cedar Rapids is dead.
Thank you for all of that convenient exposition. When they show her in the drawing, they tell her the necklace she's wearing, and it used to be Louis XVI's crown jewel, and, according to insurance records, went down with the Titanic, making it worth
A shitload of money!
And that's when she begins to tell her story. So yeah, you probably noticed that I haven't complained much this first 20 minutes. This opening chunk of the film that takes place during the present has a few problems, but it's really not that bad. It's overall pretty solid. It's true that Paxton and his team are just shady, manipulative, and greedy treasure hunters, but they're written and acted so well you still kinda like them. You still want to see them find the necklace they're looking for. And the old woman playing Rose, and I mean it old woman, she was actually alive when the Titanic sank, isn't that bad either, and is also likable. Combine all that with breathtaking cinematography and clever editing, and you get a pretty solid first 20 minutes. Nothing Criterion-worthy, but still solid. Unfortunately, it's when the flashback starts that the big problems with the movie begin to rear their ugly heads. She begins to tell her story, and we finally meet the star of the movie. Not Leonardo DiCaprio, not Kate Winslet, the ship. It is incredible how well they recreate the Titanic. Not only did they build several almost life-size models of the ship and perfectly enhance them with CGI to create some of the best special and visual effects ever put on screen, but everything from the cinematography, to the costumes, to the set pieces, to, well, everything, creates such a vivid and detailed portrayal of the awe and wonder all of the passengers felt while on the ship. It's one of the best recreations of a historical location in the history of cinema, and it almost makes the film captivating simply by its own merit. Now, over the years, certain historians and scholars have pointed out various inaccuracies regarding, articles of clothing or props in the background or stuff, but they bring the ship to life in such an incredible way that, honestly, I don't really care. We see a young Rose arriving with her mother and the man she's being forced to marry.
It is unsinkable. God himself could not sink this ship. What?
I think the evidence speaks for itself.
Right. All the trunks from that car there, 12 from here, and the safe to the parlor suite rooms B52, 54, 56.
Get it? Because they're rich. We then see the male lead, Jack, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. Shut up! As he and his Italian stereotype friend attempt to win tickets for the ship in a poker game. They succeed and they race on board the ship. And this is where we begin to see the really big problems with the movie. James Cameron is phenomenal at writing action. He's written some of the best action films of all time. And for the action scenes in the movie, that works great. But he's really out of his element writing romance. And as a result, Jack and Rose feel really, really artificial. They don't feel like real people. They feel more like tools. Rose is a strong young woman being oppressed by her family and culture because, well, the story is supposed to have a strong young woman being oppressed by her family and culture. Jack is a free-spirited and optimistic guy who helps Rose learn how to be herself because, well, the story is supposed to have a free-spirited and optimistic guy who helps Rose learn how to be herself. Whenever these two are on the screen, you don't see their characters, you see their purpose in the story. And because of that, they don't really feel like real people. They feel very, very artificial. And when you combine that with dialogue that's pretty weak in a lot of places, it becomes very hard to get invested in these two characters we have to spend the next 3 hours with. Not only that, but please tell me I'm not the only one that finds Jack a little annoying.
Cause we're going to America. Full house, boys! No! We're riding in high style now! We're a couple of regular swells! We're the luckiest sons of bitches in the world, you know that? Of course not, that's not the point! Goodbye, I'll miss you!
You see, this was the part of DiCaprio's career when he was still just a pretty boy intended to pander to teenage girls. It wasn't until he started to grow out of the age range where he could do that he began to actually show his talents as an actor. I've seen a lot of movies with this guy, and the only ones I've seen where he gives a fantastic performance are the ones where he's older and no longer in the age range of a teenage heartthrob. Unfortunately, this movie was made back when he was a teenage heartthrob, and his acting really suffers as a result. As the ship begins to depart, we see our two leads begin to settle into their cabins.
What's the artist's name? Something Picasso?
Something Picasso. He won't amount to a thing. He won't. Trust me.
Tee-hee. Ha-ha. One of the best performances in this movie, however, is... Ah! It's the lady from Misery! Hide me! No, that's just Kathy Bates as Molly Brown, and she does actually give one of the best performances in the movie. Despite the fact that she only has a limited amount of screen time, she's a ton of fun, and exactly what people who knew the real Molly Brown said she was like.
Why do they always insist on announcing dinner like a damn cavalry charge?
The ship makes its last stop in the UK, and it's off to the open ocean. And... this scene is awesome.
Take it to sea, Mr. Murdoch. Let's stretch your legs.
Yes, sir.
On ahead, full, Mr. Moody. Very good, sir.
All ahead, full.
Overhead, full! Hey, let's go from right up! We go full ahead! Come on, put your backs in!
"21 knots, sir."
Except for this part.
I'm the king of the world!
Oh, dear Scorsese, please put him in your movie so he can start doing some real acting. We see Jack drawing at the bow with Italian stereotype when he sees Rose for the very first time. But don't worry, it's not Italian stereotype that tells him he has no chance with her. It's Irish stereotype.
Oh, forget it, Boyle. You just like have angels fly out of your arses get next to the likes of her.
But we see Rose has had enough with the harshness and restrictions of her life, and she goes to the stern to jump off the ship and commit suicide. And who should just happen to be in her path? Why, Jack, how convenient. And this whole exchange of dialogue in which he tries to convince her not to jump brings to light another huge problem with this movie. Jack's too perfect! Really think about it. What are Jack's flaws? Nothing. He has none. He always knows everything someone else needs to know. He always knows exactly the right things to say. Whenever he and Rose are at a crossroads and the wrong decision could kill them both, he always knows not only the right decision, but the scientific reasons for why it's the right decision. If he were a woman, he'd be a terrible case of Mary Sue syndrome. There's nothing wrong with him. And it's obvious Cameron intentionally wrote this guy to be 100% perfect and flawless so that he could appeal to all the teenage girls in the audience, but it really hurts the film because it makes his character feel even more artificial than he already did. In order for an audience to get invested in a character, there has to be some flaw in the character that the audience can identify with. In Star Wars, Luke's main flaw is that he's not content with the life he's being forced to live and dreams of more. That's something the audience can identify with, because we ourselves often feel discontent with our own lives. In The Godfather, Michael's main flaw is his internal debate between helping his family when they need him and staying out of the business he swore to stay out of. That's something the audience can identify with, because we've all experienced times in our lives where our loyalties became split and we were forced to make a difficult decision as a result. But Jack Dawson has no flaws whatsoever. He's perfect, and because he's perfect, it's really hard to get invested in him, and he feels like an artificial tool. Characters need to have flaws in order to be interesting. If a character is absolutely perfect and has no flaws whatsoever, there's no real reason to get concerned about them or care about what happens to them. He convinces her to climb back over, but she slips and falls. Jack is able to pull her back over, but some crew members find them and have Jack arrested, thinking he was trying to rape Rose. Rose makes up a ridiculous story about what happened, and, like a bunch of idiots, they actually believe her, and she convinces her fiancé to invite Jack to dinner. But the fiancé's bodyguard knows they were up to something.
It's interesting that the young lady slipped so suddenly and you still had time to remove your jacket and your shoes.
We then see Rose's fiancé giving her the necklace in an attempt to buy her love. This is actually a very good scene. The incorporation of the necklace into the Titanic story is decently clever, it makes sense given the context of the characters in the story, and it really does a great job at giving us insight into both of these characters and being very uncomfortable at the same time. Good job, Cameron. I'm impressed. We then see Rose thanking Jack for saving her, and this actually starts out as a good scene too. We get more insight into both of their characters, and they feel a bit like real people for a minute. But all that goes right down the toilet when the film hammers in just how perfect a guy Jack is.
Look, I know what you must be thinking. Poor little rich girl. What does she know about misery?
No. No, it's not what I was thinking. What I was thinking was, what could have happened to this girl to make her think she had no way out?
And not only is he a kind, sympathetic guy who truly understands this poor woman, but he is also an artiste. Movie, give him a flaw! Stop trying to make him so perfect to please all the teenage girls in the audience and actually make him a compelling character. It's very hard for a character with no flaws to be compelling. You have no idea how much you're hurting the film by making him so darn perfect! Gosh! We then see Rose's evil mother scoffing about how vulgar Molly Brown is. She has the audacity to have fun and be friendly. We are too rich to have fun and be friendly. But then, rather suddenly, the scene actually gets quite good once the camera moves to the captain's table. We see him and the chairman of the company who owns the ship debating over whether or not to increase the ship's speed. The businessman wants the public to marvel at her speed, but the captain is afraid it might be dangerous to push the engines that hard. Not only does this, in a cleverly subtle way, foreshadow the reasons why the ship hit the iceberg, but it also does a great job recreating the event in general by showing us the real people on board and the decisions they were faced with. It's like Cameron was writing this going, no, this is too fake, I gotta put in something real to offset it. Oh no, that was too real, I gotta put in something fake to offset it. Oh no! We then cut to Jack and Rose out on deck, with Rose once again clarifying how darn rootin' tootin' perfect Jack is.
Why can't I be like you, Jack? Just head out for the horizon whenever I feel like it.
This brings us to the infamous spitting scene, but don't worry, it doesn't only exist to show how perfect Jack is. It exists to show how perfect Jack is and how evil Rose's mother is.
What did one poor person say to the other?
What?
Who cares?
Molly Brown notices Jack ain't got nothing to wear for dinner, so she loans him one of her fancy suits. Shut up!
I saw that in a Nickelodeon once, and I always wanted to do it.
You see, Prometheus, he, totally has a flaw. He doesn't know how to act around rich people. He's awkward and he's cute. No, that doesn't count. You see, you know what? No, I'm done. That horse died 2 weeks ago.
I'll see you at dinner.
Darling, surely you remember Mr. Dawson?
Dawson. That's amazing. You could almost pass for a gentleman.
Get it? Because they're rich! And rich people are evil! So as the dinner begins, everything seems like it's going well, but the evil mother steps in to make sure no one respects the ruffian, rapscallion hooligan.
Tell us of the accommodations in steerage, Mr. Dawson. I hear they're quite good on this ship.
Get it? Because they're rich, and rich people are evil. If this movie can repeat things over and over, why can't I? Jack's able to disarm their attacks with delightfully witty comebacks, and afterwards he decides to take Rose to one of the steerage parties. And just look at this. I'm sorry, but it really pisses me off how one-dimensional all of this is. Instead of giving us complex, interesting characters, we just get incredibly lazy and pointless romance combined with the same lazy and generic rich people bad, poor people good message common in bad movies. Every character in this film is a tool. The cinematography is gorgeous, the attention to detail on the sets and costumes is incredible, and the editing is very, very clever. Aesthetically, it's amazing. But the characters in it and the relationships they have with each other feel like something a third grader would come up with while not paying attention in class. I love this movie, but I hate it! I love this movie, but I hate it, and I love this movie, but I hate it, and I love this movie, and I hate it, but I love it, and I hate it.
Prometheus, you must be strong.
I'm sorry, God. I can't do this anymore. There's 2 hours left. I'm only a third of the way through the movie.
But you must finish it.
I don't want to. They even use the spinning POV shot. That's one of the laziest things you can do with a love story.
It is required to rediscover your love of film.
I don't wanna.
It is your destiny.
I don't wanna.
It's because I said so.
Fine. We get the obligatory "I'm a man and I'm rich, so you do what I say" scene that's so one-dimensional I can't believe a great writer like Cameron actually wrote it. He probably farted it out or something. And then we get the exact same scene again, literally back to back, only this time it's with the mother. To be fair, Cameron actually does try to develop and humanize the mother a little bit here. She explains how Rose's father died, leaving them a lot of debt, and her arranged marriage to this guy is their only chance of not losing everything they have. However, it's still pretty clear that she's in this for more than that, and we have to sit through one of the most painfully obvious metaphors you'll see in a long time. Get it? The corset is gradually getting tighter and tighter, just like she feels her oppressive world is getting tighter and tighter around her. Oh my gosh, you just did something any first-year film student could do. I should know. I am one. Jack tries to confront her about his feelings, and like every Romeo and Juliet story on the planet, she says how it's not possible, and they can never be together, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, I really believe that. This is totally the last time they're gonna see each other. Just like in Suicide Squad when the Joker's helicopter crashed and he totally died. But after seeing a little girl placing a napkin on her lap, she quite suddenly changes her mind. Look, I know how she sees the napkin as like a symbol for how controlling her culture is and how she sees it as a reason to go back to Jack, but it happens so quickly it has almost no emotional impact on us. And so she goes back to Jack, they hook up, and they live happily ever after. And that was James Cameron's Titanic. It's a really short movie at only 1 hour and 20 minutes, but it has a lot of problems, but I think it also has some merits and... What?
You're trying to avoid the scene, aren't you?
What scene? That was the end of the movie. There was a sunset and everything.
You need to talk about that scene.
I really don't want to.
You have to.
I really, really don't want to.
Fine. Then I'll just erase Star Wars from existence. Now, where did I keep that file?
No, wait. Fine. I'll do it. But I really don't want to. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is the most famous scene in the entire movie. The scene where Rose decides to once and for all go back to Jack. You all know what happens. There's no reason for me to say what happens because you already know what happens, but I'm gonna say it anyway, and you're gonna say it with me. Everybody now, I'm flying, Jack, I'm flying! This scene right here perfectly sums up my entire dilemma about the movie. On the one hand, the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. The colors, the lighting, everything. The effects are amazing. You really feel how gigantic this ship is. The music is beautiful. Say what you want about this song with lyrics, but you can't deny the instrumental is absolutely beautiful. The editing is brilliant. Every shot, every angle, every cut is assembled and paced absolutely perfectly. But the characters and what they're doing?
Is the stupidest, dumbest, most lame idea
in the history of stupid, dumb, lame ideas I've ever heard.
No actual human woman is this naive. Yeah, you could make the argument that she's been so shut up her whole life that this is incredible to her, but any actual woman with a brain in her head would be like, oh, cool. It's like I'm flying. Neat. They would not be all, I'm flying! I'm flying! Oh my gosh! Oh my god! I'm flying! Ah! Why am I taking this so seriously, you may ask? Because instead of creating compelling characters that we want to see survive the impending disaster, we get two attractive faces who are only there to be attractive faces and make teenage girls go, aww. This scene is so manipulative in how much it panders to female heartstrings that they still betray Jack as this perfect god among men. Just look at his reaction when the woman he loves with all his heart shows up after supposedly leaving him forever. That's right, he doesn't have one. This scene is so manipulative that instead of showing excitement, joy, or any other emotion that a human man would feel after hearing the woman of his dreams says she loves him back, he just goes right into the whole, look, I'm the perfect man mode. Dear Lord in heaven, this scene pisses me off so much. Even the people walking in the background are like, hey, what's happening over there? Oh crap, James Cameron's trying to do romance again. Just ignore them, they might go away. Cameron, buddy, if you're gonna do romance, do it with complex, interesting characters that we can get attached with. Don't just do what Love Stories for Dummies told you to do. Please, you're a great writer. You've written some of my favorite films of all time. Please put the amount of time and effort that you put into those characters in those films into the characters in this one. Please. And if the I'm flying scene is the most famous scene in the movie, then this next scene is definitely the most infamous. You also all know what it is. It's the scene where Jack draws Rose with nothing on but the diamond the treasure hunters are looking for. There's not really much I can say about this scene, and there's not really a lot of clips I can show without this video getting age restricted. But even if the drawing of the drawing is a big part of the present day opening, and a big part of the whole necklace subplot and everything, it's still pretty clear that this scene only exists so Cameron can show us what was under that corset we saw earlier. And the really cool fact that these are actually Cameron's hands doing the drawing. That's pretty cool. In fact, Cameron drew all the pieces seen in Jack's sketchbook throughout the film. He's a man of many talents. It's a pity Love Stories aren't one of them. We then get a scene where we see the captain and the first officer discussing how the extremely calm water is going to make the icebergs difficult to see due to the fact that no waves will be hitting them. Again, if the whole movie was like this, focusing on the real people involved in the disaster and the decisions they were faced with, this movie would be an absolute masterpiece. But instead, the focus goes back to Jack and Rose, who have to outrun her fiancé's bodyguard and in the process find themselves in a car where they have their obligatory sex scene. My fast-forward senses are tingling. We then see she left her fiancé a note with a pretty epic burn.
I've got a better idea.
He didn't say an idea. Once back on the deck, Rose declares that she is officially going to run away with Jack once the ship arrives in New York. But that ain't gonna happen, because here's Icy!
Is there anyone there?
Yes, what do you see?
Iceberg, right ahead!
Thank you.
I love this scene! This is about as suspenseful and thrilling a movie scene can possibly be. The music, the editing, the brilliant cinematography, everything makes this scene give me goosebumps every single time. It's just incredible. It succeeds in almost every way possible. I love this scene, I love this scene, I love this scene, I love this scene. I hate that an accident that killed thousands of people happened, but I love this scene, I love this scene.
If
this is the direction the rats are going, that's good enough for me.
Okay, that was funny. But forget about the ship sinking and the impending death of thousands of people. We gotta go back to focusing on how the evil fiancé is trying to frame Jack for stealing the necklace. Oh no!
Don't you believe them, Rose? You know it. You know I didn't do
Let's
it.
go.
Rose,
Come on,
you
let's
know
go.
I didn't do it, Rose. Rose!
Come on, there's a good lad. Come on, son, there's a good lad. Come on.
But Cameron gets some sense back in him as we then cut to the captain, who must decide what to do. The ship's engineer tells him that the ship is most certainly going to sink, and there's no way to stop it. Not only that, but they only have an hour or two until it happens. See how good the scenes focusing on real people are, Cameron? Why don't you stick to those?
Oh, it is a little slut, isn't it?
Look, guys! I found a copy of the Titanic script! Gorilla grunting, rich people bad, poor people good, gorilla grunting, ooh ooh ah ah. But it seems the esteemed upper class have no time for such silly peasant matters as the ship sinking.
Go back and turn the heaters on in our rooms. I'd like a cup of tea when I return.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
The engineer tells Rose the bad news, and I really like this scene. You really see the conflict in their eyes as they realize they must get to the lifeboats as quickly as possible due to the fact that there aren't enough for everyone. It's uncomfortable and it's powerful. But, as usual with this movie, it goes right back to Stupidville as the ship's police handcuff Jack to a pole. Honestly, the scenes following Italian stereotype and Irish stereotype are significantly more interesting than the scenes with our two fricking main characters. At least they feel more like real people. After a while, the fiancé's bodyguard decides to leave Jack all alone and... No, he seriously took the key to the handcuffs with him? Rich people are not this evil! Or at least, not all rich people are this evil! Do you seriously think your audience is stupid enough to believe that the rich passengers on board the Titanic were so evil that they would intentionally leave a man to die? Arrested for robbery or not, I highly doubt anybody on the ship, regardless of their financial status, and especially when it was still believed there were enough lifeboats for everyone, would intentionally leave a man to die. Wow, Cameron, you are trying hard to make us hate rich people right now.
Will the lifeboats be seated according to class? Oh, Mother. Shut up! Don't you understand? The water is freezing and there aren't enough boats. Not enough by half. Half the people on this ship are going to die.
Not the better half.
Rich people are not this frickin' evil! Rose decides she's had enough of these people. Trust me, so have we, but not for the reasons Cameron wanted us to. And the fiancé finally gets his comeuppance. Or does he? I don't really care, I just want to get the movie over with. She finds Jack and is able to break his handcuffs with an axe. And even then, he's still Mr. Perfect Head.
Listen, just hit it really hard and really fast. Come on, wait. Open your hands up a little more.
Like that?
Right.
The room around you is flooding and your girlfriend might be about to chop your arm off. You can lose the confidence for 5 seconds so we know you're actually human. Like the engineer here, who, like anyone would be, is super pissed off that lifeboats capable of holding 70 people are being set off with 12. Or these steerage passengers who are rioting in an attempt to get past the ship's staff and get to the upper decks. The scenes like this, showing the panic and chaos, are some of the best in the movie. I really wish the movie focused on stuff like this. But instead we gotta go back to, look how perfect Jack is, as they get stuck behind a locked gate and no one else but Jack comes up with the extremely obvious solution of breaking through it with a blunt object. I will give the scene credit though, the music is awesome.
1, 2, 3. Again. Now let's go. Let's go, Rose. You can't go up there. You can't do this.
We see that chaos is beginning to ensue on deck, and the crew in charge of lifeboats has had to resort to firing guns in order to keep everyone under control, and the company suit from earlier gets into a boat that's about to be lowered instead of helping more passengers get in. This guy, due to his cowardice, is often portrayed in a very negative light, so it's nice to see that this film actually shows the conflict within him and the shame he later feels for such cowardice. Fiancé catches up with them, and he and Jack try to get Rose on a boat without them, making up a lie that they bribed an officer to let them on one of the other boats. At first, it's admirable seeing Cameron actually include a scene where these two work together to ensure Rose's safety. But all of that goes right down the toilet when you realize it's just another opportunity to show us how good and wise Jack is, and how one-dimensionally evil the fiancé is. And if you think I'm lying, Cameron actually puts the scene on hold to hammer that into us.
There's no arrangement, is there?
All right.
No, there is.
Even.
Not that you'll benefit much from it.
And even away.
I always win, Jack.
And lower away evenly, lads.
One way or another.
What's that, Trim?
Oh, dear audience, see how the good and noble Jack, a man from God's own heart, is tortured and abused by the dastardly fiancé and his despicable schemes. Screw you, movie. And as you'd expect, true love always wins, as Rose jumps back onto the ship to rejoin Jack. But the fiancé doesn't like this, as he takes his bodyguard's gun and starts shooting at Jack. Okay, I'm going to say it again. Rich people are not this! Oh, you know what? I give up. They escape him, and he has a sudden revelation that once again hammers in how greedy and selfish he is.
What could possibly be funny?
I put the diamond in the coat.
And I put the coat on her!
But we gotta go back to how perfect and admirable our heroes are by showing them rescue a poor little boy, only to be misunderstood when his father finds him. We'll show them by having them die. Congratulations, Cameron. You just killed a young boy and his father, so you can show how perfect our heroes are. 10 points to the DP for not realizing that pointing the camera right at the stunt double's faces is going to show the stunt double's faces. They get to a gate only to find that it's locked, and the water's rising very quickly. A crew member attempts to help them, but drops the key and runs away like a little girl. Jack goes under to get the keys and must figure out which one opens the gate.
The short one! Try the short one! Hurry, Jack! Hurry, Jack! Hurry, Jack!
You know, you could actually help Rose. You could have gone under also to increase the chances of getting the keys. You could have helped him get that one key out when it got stuck. You could actually do something instead of just standing there screaming. For all the women empowerment stuff in this movie, it's nice to know you're still a pretty pathetic damsel in distress when the situation calls for it. Oh, right. She reached out her hand when he was trying to swim to her. That's something. The chaos up top is only getting crazier as, in a pretty powerful scene, the first officer is forced to kill Irish stereotype and a young boy for trying to force their way onto a boat. Ashamed of what he had to do, the next shot he fires is on himself. This scene is very effective, and however, in real life it's unknown if it actually happened. Several survivors reported seeing an officer shoot 2 people and then himself. However, it's unknown who it was. The idea that it was this particular officer still hasn't been confirmed, and likely never will be. In fact, when this movie came out, the family of this officer got upset at Cameron because they felt he was being portrayed as a coward, when Cameron's actual intention was to portray him as someone who couldn't live with himself after killing 2 people. I just dropped some knowledge onto your computer screen. Hear that, parents? My videos are educational. But the guy who's definitely a coward is the evil fiancé, who steals a kid so he can get onto a boat. I'm tired. They run into the ship's engineer, who gives them his farewell and a life jacket. Props to Cameron for including the guy who, according to survivors, refused a life jacket and said, quote, "We are dressed in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen." Now Cameron's getting educational up in here. Also, a very beautiful scene where the band decides to keep playing, which is also true. Many survivors reported that they kept playing until the end. And this begins a long sequence where the film takes a much-needed break from the Jack and Rose story and just shows us the horror of the disaster. People are swamping lifeboats, smokestacks are falling over, the grand staircase is flooding, a pastor's giving a bunch of people their last rites. It's a heartbreaking few minutes that remains unforgettable. Plus, the music is absolutely perfect. It's a scene that can only elicit one response from someone.
God almighty.
And things only get worse when the ship can't take its own weight anymore and breaks in two, crushing all the people below who thought they were safe. The front portion pulls the back upright, and in one of the most incredible sequences in film history, it finally goes down, taking our characters with it. This was incredible. If you were to tell me, if I didn't know anything about this movie, and you were to tell me that James Cameron made a film about the Titanic, this couple of minutes is the absolute masterpiece I would have expected. It just hits every single mark perfectly. It's one of the most incredible and unforgettable disaster sequences in the history of cinema. So how does Cameron screw it up?
The ship is gonna suck us down. Take a deep breath when I say.
How do you know that? No, seriously, how do you know that? Did your poor, destitute upbringing give you a thorough understanding of underwater physics? How could you possibly know that the ship is gonna suck you down? Okay, first of all, science says that doesn't happen. Number two, the two of them find a large piece of debris that no one else seems to notice, and, upon trying to get on, realize that only one of them can be on it at a time. Jack does the manly thing and allows Rose to be the one that gets on it, not realizing they could just take turns. And, because they don't take turns, right as a boat seems to be coming back for them, Jack freezes to death. She finds a whistle and is able to get the boat to come back for her, and her alone. The boats get rescued by another ship, and it seems the fiancé gets his comeuppance, as he doesn't find Rose and eventually kills himself after losing everything in the Great Depression. The treasure hunter gets his arc ended too, as he realizes he's been exploiting a horrible tragedy for his own personal gain. But what about the diamond? Well, it turns out the fiancé's revelation was correct, as she found it in her coat and has had it this whole time. And, in an ending that frustrates a lot of people, she drops it into the ocean, giving it back to the ship. We see photographs of the free life she lived, free from the control of her family, and she dies peacefully, reuniting with Jack and all the other souls lost on board the ship. And, ladies and gentlemen, that was James Cameron's Titanic. So what's the verdict? I mean, the whole point of this unusually long video was to decide whether or not it's a good film, so what's the verdict?
Yeah, what's the verdict?
Well, it's a masterpiece. This movie gets better and better every single time I see it. It's an absolutely amazing recreation of one of the greatest tragedies of all time. From aesthetic stuff like sets and costumes, to artistic stuff like cinematography, directing, editing, and pacing. It's just a cinematic wonder to behold that needs to be seen to be believed. There are so many unforgettable scenes, and every single moment has something to witness in indescribable awe. And the musical score is one of the best you'll ever hear. The genius use of a classical orchestra and a crisp, precisely directed choir cause the music to give you gigantic chills every single time you hear it. Even the end credits song, which so many people love to mock, really isn't that bad. All of the real people on board are casted perfectly, written perfectly, and acted with brilliance. Seeing the actual people involved have their motivations explored in such a respectful way is really refreshing, and you totally feel like this is what actually happened that horrible night. I can confidently say this is one of the greatest films ever created by man. But at the same time, it's just painful. In a bad way. Like I said before, the supporting characters are all brilliant and amazing, but the main characters are some of the most one-dimensional, bland, and aggravating you'll ever see. Jack and Rose never feel like real people. They just feel like one-note tools. The film tries way too hard to appeal to teenage girls by making Jack the most perfect man imaginable, and Rose has no character other than the one which serves her purpose in the story. Now listen here, I swear to you I am not bashing these two because I hate love stories. That is not true at all. I will freely admit that love stories can be full-on great when they're done right. Even a love story shoehorned into Titanic can be a full-on great one when done right. But this one is not done right. This isn't a good love story. It's what a third grader thinks is a good love story. And for an absolute master writer like James Cameron to create it is just mind-boggling. And outside of these two, the other main characters all have the same problems. The movie has a very simple, small-minded message of poor people good, rich people bad. All of the poor people are portrayed as kind, considerate, wise people who love everyone they come in contact with, and all the rich people are portrayed as evil, manipulative devils who are willing to do anything, even kill, to promote their own self-interests. But the reason this doesn't work is because the audience knows things don't work that way in real life. In real life, there are rich people that are wonderful gifts of God, and there are poor people who are absolute a-holes. When you categorize an entire group of people into one mindset and personality, you make it impossible for people to get invested in them because of how fake and artificial they feel. When it comes to story, this movie's just complete crap.
Prometheus, you haven't given the verdict yet. You've just summed up everything you've already said. You need to make a decision now. Is Titanic a good movie or a bad movie?
In the end...
Yes.
At the end of the day...
Yes.
When it's all said and done...
Yes.
The problems with it are just too big to excuse. However, the great things about it outnumber the problems. My final verdict is, it's not just a great film, it's one of the greatest films.
Prometheus, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. By reviewing this movie here today, you have realized that incredible things can come from the worst of places, and that horrible things can come from the best of places. A masterful recreation of history can have horrible characters. A pathetically terrible production company can make a decent movie. What matters is not where a film comes from, but what the film actually is. It's okay to acknowledge the good things in Revenge of the Sith, even though it's a horrible film. It's okay to make fun of all the cheesy moments in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, despite the fact that it's a great show. Things are not black and white. Every single thing I have created has good and bad within it. And by realizing this here today, you have rediscovered what it means to appreciate and love the art of film.
I have, God. I have.
Now go, my son, and return to making indie defense subs and we swear we're not Disney's. Return to what you've lost.
God?
Yes.
While I was in that rut, I did some thinking, and I think I have some new ideas I want to try. New ideas that I think I can turn into something special. I'm not saying I'm gonna stop. I want to stop doing the In Defense subs and We Swear We're Not Disney's. I just think that maybe I want to do them a little less often and try some of my other ideas. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Go and do what the heart I gave you tells you to do.
Thanks, God. But before I go, there's something I want to say to the audience. A lot of people who hated this movie when it came out hated it because they wanted a purely historical representation of the event and instead got a made-up love story. If you're one of those people, then I have a film to recommend to you. It's called A Night to Remember. This film is often mentioned in discussions about Titanic movies, but outside of that, it's relatively unknown, and most people have never heard of it. However, it's exactly what you want. It looks at the disaster from a purely historical point of view. There are no fictional characters. In fact, there really is no main character. The film just jumps around to different people so it can offer the most accurate depiction of the event it possibly can. You know how Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk has no main character, but instead just tries to recreate the event as an event? Well, A Night to Remember is the Titanic version of that. It exists in the shadow of the James Cameron film, but it's a masterpiece in its own right. You can find a great restoration of it on DVD and Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection. Check it out and enjoy it for yourself. Thank you for joining me on this long journey. There are bright things ahead for this channel and I can't wait. Until then, I'm MultiPrometheus1, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Can I go back to bed now? My fast-forward senses are tingling. Where's the remote? I don't have the remote. I don't even have my props. Need a remote. Where's the remote? Ugh. Justin, why'd you film this in the dark?